Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for making the time today to join me to learn more about ELD compliance. My name is Nicole, and I'll be running today's webinar called Top ELD Compliance Questions and Answers. So back in December 2015, the ELD mandate rule was published, and it was finalized in February 2016. The implementation deadline is a little over 3 months away, and people still have a lot of questions about what they need to do in order to be compliant with these new laws. And that's because there's a lot of misinformation and myths floating around about the mandate, which leads to a lot of confusion amongst owner-operators and fleets alike. During today's webinar, I'll go over the most commonly asked questions we get from owner-operators and hopefully help you find the answers that you're looking for. But before we get started, let's just cover a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is going to be recorded and posted on the BigRoad blog. You can visit our blog at blog.bigroad.com. And we post recaps here of all of our previous webinars, as well as information on what's happening in the industry, like new rules, regulation changes, and ELD mandate news. New content gets posted on the blog 2 times a week. It's a great source for industry news and a really easy way to keep yourselves up to date. If you submitted questions with your webinar registration, I've done my best to answer them throughout the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can enter them into the question box located on your GoToWebinar control panel. The question box is located on the lower right side of the window. At the end of the webinar, I'll open up the floor to more questions. And then during this time, I'll answer the questions that were submitted by you during the webinar. Along with the webinar recording, I'll also post a recap of all of those questions that were asked and provide some more detailed answers with links to any relevant content that could help you out. On Friday, you're going to be sent a follow-up email with a link to the blog post, so please feel free to share this with anybody who might have questions about ELD mandate compliance. Okay, let's get started. So here's what we're going to cover in today's webinar. First, we'll go over your top compliance questions by category, starting with general questions about ELDs and the ELD mandate. Next, we'll go over some questions about who is exempt from the ELD mandate. From here, we'll go through some hours of service related questions. And after that, we'll clarify some of the questions that you guys have about the differences between AOBRDs and ELDs. We'll also answer some questions that people have about BigRoad's compliance solutions. Then we'll go over questions we get about the FMCSA's approved vendors list. And finally, we'll discuss BigRoad's solution to the ELD mandate for owner-operators. And we'll end the webinar by answering the questions that were submitted during the webinar. So we'll start with questions about ELDs and specifics about the upcoming mandate. The first question we have is the electronic logging device or ELD mandate. Sorry, what is the ELD mandate? The electronic logging device or ELD mandate is the commonly referred to name for a final ruling published in December 2015 by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or FMCSA, in the Federal Register. What are the key requirements of the ELD mandate? So the first thing is the mandatory use of either automatic onboard recording devices, AOBRDs, or ELDs by most commercial motor vehicle drivers who are currently required to track their hours of service by creating records of duty status. Then specified ELD performance and design standards. And the mandate also requires ELDs to be certified and registered with the FMCSA. It also establishes what supporting documents drivers and carriers are required to keep. And finally, the mandate prohibits harassment and coercion of drivers based on ELD data or connected technology, such as a fleet management system. The rule also provides recourse for drivers who believe that they have been harassed. So what does an ELD record? It records the date, time, geolocation of the vehicle, engine hours, vehicle miles, driver or authenticated user identification, vehicle identification, and motor carrier identification, as well as event data including the engine powering up and down, a driver logging in or out, duty status changes, personal conveyance or yard moves, assigned certification of the driver's daily record, location tracking at 60-minute intervals while the vehicle is in motion, And finally, vehicle malfunctions and diagnostic events. What about privacy concerns? Well, ELD technology collects the same driver data that is currently monitored and recorded with paper logs. However, to address privacy as well as harassment concerns, there are limits on geographic location tracking and other measures in order to allow the driver to maintain a separation between on-duty and off-duty time. For example, when you are in personal conveyance mode, an ELD only needs to track your location to the nearest town or city or within a 10-mile radius, whereas if you are on-duty driving, it will track your location to the nearest 1 mile. Isn't there legal action against the ELD rule regarding the privacy issue? So, interest groups have filed challenges concerning privacy on several occasions since the mandate was first proposed. But on every occasion, the legality of the ELD rule has been maintained based on the multiple safeguards that it includes to protect drivers and fleets. When does the ELD mandate go into effect? So the ELD mandate is effective on December 18th, 2017, which is only 3 months away. At that date, all applicable CMVs will need to have an AOBRD or ELD installed by that date. If you have an AOBRD, which is more flexible and records less data, installed by that December 18th deadline, then you will have until December 16th, 2019, which is an extra 2 years, to make the move to a fully compliant ELD. And in the case of BigRoad's DashLink, that would just take a simple software upgrade, so there's no need to swap out hardware. Is this going to be required in all states? Yes, it's going to be a requirement from the federal government that all CMVs that are required to keep logs will need to have an ELD or AOBRD installed before the end of this year. There are different rules for different states, so you'll need to check with the FMCSA to make sure that you're following the rules and regulations for your state. And what about a Canadian ELD mandate? When is that happening? So currently the Canadian government is in the process of creating their own version of the ELD mandate. At the moment, they've written up their proposed ELD mandate and provided it to stakeholders and companies like BigRoad for review. However, there's been no formal timeline for implementation established at this point. The Canadian Trucking Alliance is estimating that the Canadian ELD rule will be announced before the end of this year and will follow a similar implementation timeline as the US ELD rule. And we'll keep you posted through the BigRoad blog, our social media channels, and our monthly newsletter as we get more information about this. So the next question is, how will unassigned miles be accounted for in an ELD? Unassigned driving events are tracked at the truck level. When a driver logs in and connects to the DashLink in that truck, the driver will be prompted to claim or reject any unassigned driving time. If they claim it, it's added to their logs. If they reject it, a fleet administrator will need to prompt someone else to claim the driving time or annotate the event for an inspection. The next question we have is, are you required to show a DVIR on inspection? And the answer is yes, you must complete a DVIR at the end of each day and show it to enforcement upon inspection. Can a driver make duty status changes after they submit their daily logs? And will those changes be obvious to a DOT inspector who will make these changes? So with an ELD, once a driver completes and signs off on their logs, they cannot make any adjustments. In fact, even before they sign and send their logs to you, they won't be able to make any changes because the electronic logging device records all of this information automatically. Any changes that need to be made will be done by an administrator on the back end, and then those changes will need to be signed off on by the driver. And these changes can be seen by a DOT inspector. So this next set of questions refers to mandate exemptions, who needs to comply with the mandate and have an ELD installed and who does not. The first question here is, does this rule apply to owner-operators and small fleets or just larger fleets? So we do hear a lot of people say that they've heard that only fleets with 10 or more trucks need to comply with the mandate, but this is false. Under the ELD mandate, owner-operators are required to use an ELD. There is no exemption based on being a single truck operation or an owner-operator. However, you might qualify for the other exemptions that we'll go over through some of the next questions. Another question we get asked a lot is, we are a drive-away, tow-away company, do we need ELDs? And if the vehicle that you're driving is part of the shipment, so it's empty and for sale, lease, or repair, then no, you are not required to use an ELD. And the reason for this is that the FMCSA doesn't expect you to carry multiple connectors with you in order to have something that works with every vehicle, as you usually don't know what you're going to be driving until the day of. Next up, our drivers stay within the 100-mile radius most of the time daily. Would we need ELDs? So if you stay within that 100 air mile radius all the time, then you are exempt. As soon as you go outside of that 100 air miles, you're required to run an ELD. This also applies to non-CDL freight drivers who drive within a 150 air mile radius of their starting location. We only drive outside of the 100 air mile radius some of the time. Do we need ELDs? Well, another exemption that you might qualify for is the 8 and 30 rule. If you are keeping logs for no more than 8 days in a 30-day rolling period, not a calendar month, you are exempt from running an ELD. But the biggest thing to look out for here is how you are currently required to keep your hours of service. The 8 and 30 rule applies to people who keep records of duty status for the 8 days. So if you're running long haul more than 8 days in that 30-day period, then you'll still need an ELD. Do the same rules apply to someone hauling personal items and not for hire? And if you're hauling personal items and don't currently need to keep a records of duty status, then you will not need an ELD. If you are driving a vehicle that requires you to have a commercial driving license and keep records of duty status, then you will need to have an ELD. But not if you are driving your own personal vehicle for personal use, not under the direction of a motor carrier. In that case, you would not need an ELD. The next question is, are private passenger carrying vehicles exempt? So again, if you're required to use a commercial driving license to operate your vehicle and you are currently keeping logs, then it's probable that you're going to need an ELD. You might qualify for an ELD exemption, but it would depend on the distance that you're traveling, how often you're operating your vehicle, and whether or not you're operating your vehicle for compensation or not. The next question is, do trucks older than 2000 need an ELD? So there is the pre-model year 2000 exemption, and the FMCSA recently updated this rule to specify that it applies to the engine model year and not the chassis. So anyone running a CMV with the engine model year of 1999 or older will not need an ELD, regardless of the model year of the truck, and they can continue to create records of duty status in the same way that they are today. This is because the technology and connections aren't compatible with older engines, and it'll be too difficult and costly for the FMCSA to expect drivers to comply. However, if you're operating a truck with a model year older than 2000, but the engine model year is 2000 or newer, then you will still need to run an ELD and will not be exempt. Next question is, we use a time clock. Do we need an ELD? If you're not currently required to keep a records of duty status, then you won't need to run an ELD. You'll just continue to log the way that you're doing today, which could be using electronic logs or paper logs. Another pretty common question that we get is, will livestock haulers have exemptions? So livestock haulers are not exempt from running an ELD unless, of course, they fall under one of the other exemptions that we've outlined. However, there's been discussion around creating exemptions for livestock haulers. This was not published, or sorry, this was included in a House bill that was published back in July 2017. However, at this point, it has not been approved, so we'll keep you posted on the BigRoad blog of any developments here. We're expecting an update closer to 2018. If a driver returns to home base every night and only works 60 hours a week, are they still required to use an ELD? So it depends on what they're driving and where. If you're a CMV driver driving 60 hours a week and you are currently required to keep paper logs, then you're likely going to need an ELD. So once again, as a rule of thumb, if you're currently required to keep records of duty status, you're probably going to need an ELD once the mandate hits. But if you're not, and you qualify for one of the exemptions that we outlined, then you're not going to need an ELD. Next question we have is, our drivers are field mechanics that drive to job sites and work on heavy machinery. So they're wheel loaders, excavators, etc. And do they have any specific regulations? So this depends on a number of factors. If they're driving vehicles that require CDL, one exemption that might apply to them is that 100 air mile radius exemption that we spoke about earlier. So once again, if they never drive outside of that 100 air mile radius of their starting location, then they're exempt from the ELD mandate. They might also be exempt using the 8 and 30 rule. So if they are only required to keep logs 8 days in a rolling 30-day period. But generally speaking, if they need logs now, then they'll need an ELD by December 18th of this year. So this is about a operation that is exempt. We are exempt from the new ELD rules. How will our drivers explain to an enforcement official the rules and guidelines? So this really comes down to enforcement agents being educated by the FMCSA. And to be honest, we're not really sure how this is going to play out. You're probably going to experience a little bit of growing pain here. So I'd recommend that you print out the ELD mandate final rule and highlight the exemption that you fall under. And remember, you can always challenge violations and fines using the data queues. So the next set of questions is in regards to hours of service regulations, why they were put in place, and clarifying some of those rules. So first, why were hours of service regulations put in place? The main goal of hours of service regulations is to prevent accidents caused by driver fatigue. To do this, hours of service regulations limit the number of hours a commercial motor vehicle, or CMV driver, can drive their vehicle and work while regulating brakes. This includes both truck and motor coach or bus drivers. Fatigue is prevented by keeping the drivers on a 21 to 24-hour schedule to maintain their natural sleep and wake cycle. What is tracked when it comes to hours of service? To be compliant, drivers need to track on-duty not driving time. So this includes the time that you're working or required to be ready to work and not driving. It might include waiting to be dispatched from a terminal, the time that you spend inspecting, fueling, or washing your truck, loading, unloading, or supervising staff, breakdowns or time spent dealing with maintenance issues, and drug tests. And on-duty driving time, this is pretty straightforward. This is just the time that you spend driving your vehicle. And it's also required to track breaks. So this could be your 30-minute break or your sleep berth, if applicable, to show that you are not operating the vehicle during that time. And then finally, your off-duty time. So this is when you are fully relieved from all on-duty work and responsibility of performing tasks for work. So you're free to do what you want to do and leave the place where your vehicle is parked. If you're not doing any work, paid or unpaid, for a motor carrier, and you are not doing any paid work for anybody else, then you may record your time as off-duty. The next question that we get is, occasionally I run over my time because of the time I spend waiting to load and unload on job sites. How can I more accurately document what's happening? So if you're over your time on a specific day, make a note in the notes section located in the daily log for that day. You can also add a picture of, say, a loading receipt to prove the time that it took. However, that on-duty time will continue to work against you if you're over your hours. And unfortunately, the FMCSA and DOT inspectors don't sympathize with time overages based on waiting for loads regardless of the situation. So it's likely going to come down to adjusting or managing your time a little bit differently. Can you explain the split sleeper berth provision? So to qualify for the split sleeper berth provision, you need to be in sleeper mode for at least 8 hours, but no more than 10 hours. This rest period will not count as part of the 14 hours of on-duty time. And then you'll need a separate rest period that must be at least 2 consecutive hours, but less than 10 hours long. This period can be off-duty, in sleeper, or in combination of both. This does count as part of your 14 hours. It doesn't matter which rest period you take first, but after your second rest period has been completed, then you'll get your new hours available. And this next set of questions is about AOBRDs, ELDs, and the 2-year AOBRD extension clause, or as some of you here refer to as the grandfather clause. Let's start with some questions to introduce the differences. What is the major difference between an ELD and an AOBRD? So generally speaking, electronic logging devices are more restrictive, and the rules surrounding them are more specific than they are with AOBRDs. There's also a big difference in the amount of data that is collected and shown in an ELD versus an AOBRD. So you can see on the screen here what a daily log looks like in an AOBRD, and this is what's visible to a DOT officer upon inspection. On this next screen, this is the same day of logs, but using an ELD. As you can see, there are a great deal more events recorded and displayed. So another difference is what you can edit with both devices. Essentially, in an AOBRD, you can edit everything except for your actual drive time. And drive time is one of those things that's pretty firm in both. With an AOBRD, you can't edit drive time unless the driving was done in error. And with an ELD, you're not able to edit it at all. But with an AOBRD, you can still edit your vehicle location and you can change an event. So you can adjust your duty status from on duty to off, or from on duty driving to personal conveyance or yard move. So I'll include a link to a blog post and webinar recording that we did earlier this year that goes over this in more detail in Friday's blog. So the next question that we have about AOBRDs is, will the BigRoad app on a cell phone be accepted as a grandfathered device? And there are a lot of people that are confused about whether the app will be compliant with the mandate. But no, the BigRoad mobile app is an electronic logbook app, and no electronic logbook app on its own is compliant with the upcoming mandate. In order to comply, you will need to run an engine-connected ELD or AOBRD. So it needs to be something that plugs into the vehicle's ECM or is hardwired into the vehicle's engine and automatically records your records of duty status. In order to take advantage of the grandfather clause, you can install an AOBRD, which is more flexible than an ELD, before December 18th, 2017, and use it as an AOBRD until December 16th, 2019. And BigRoad's dash link can be used as either an AOBRD or an ELD. The next question we have is, if I'm signed up with BigRoad's dash link before the mandate deadline, will I be able to run it as an AOBRD until 2019? So BigRoad's dash link can be installed and used as an AOBRD until that extension deadline of December 16th, 2019. You'll be grandfathered in if you purchase and begin using the dash link as an AOBRD before December 18th, 2017. And then when you're ready to make the move to a more restrictive ELD, sometime before that December 16th, 2019 deadline, it can be done with a simple software update, so there's no need to purchase new hardware. Once you have it installed, you can make the switch anytime. You can either wait until December 2019 or make the move sooner, depending on your comfort level. It's totally up to you. How will enforcement deal with trucks who are still using AOBRDs until December 2019? Well, it's hard to say exactly, but enforcement agents do already know what AOBRD logs look like because they've been around for a while longer and have been they've been trained to fully inspect them. So the FMCSA is currently working with enforcement agents to train them on ELD inspections. Those inspections will probably not go quite as smoothly as AOBRD inspections will for the first little while as the inspecting officers get comfortable with inspecting ELDs. The next question is, can I stockpile AOBRDs that aren't assigned to trucks in case I change trucks or carriers or add more trucks to my fleet? And the FMCSA has recently released more insight on how this is going to work, as previously the information wasn't super straightforward. AOBRDs need to be purchased before December 18, 2017 and installed or used before this date in order to be grandfathered into the 2-year extension clause. So you can't install the new AOBRD after December 18, 2017. In the eyes of the FMCSA, this is considered a newly purchased device and will put you out of compliance at this point, as you'll need to install an ELD in order to be compliant. The next question is, can you edit your logs using BigRoad, and if so, what will be visible during an inspection? So if you're running as an AOBRD, most aspects of your logs are editable, and you can still edit much of your logs legally. However, once you turn on ELD mode, logs are no longer editable, and information is pulled directly from the engine. This is a requirement by the DOT and FMCSA, and you'll find this with all ELD providers. A supervisor can make edits to the logs under the ELD mandate, but the driver needs to accept them first. There will be a trail of changes tracked to an inspecting officer that they'll be able to see. Will yard move still be available if I move from an AOBRD to an ELD? When you're running an ELD, you'll need to be put into on-duty status in order to use yard move. However, if you run an AOBRD, then you're still able to use yard move without it affecting your hours of service. So this is one of the many bonuses of using an AOBRD until 2019. And the next set of questions are about BigRoad solutions, their features, and their capabilities. The first question I have is, what device do you recommend for a small trucking company, somebody under 5 trucks? So this one's easy. I, of course, recommend the DashLink, but not just because I'm biased. The DashLink really is a great device for small operations because it's one of the most affordable options. There's no upfront hardware fee, and our licensing cost is very low. It's also really simple and easy to use. Drivers are always commenting on how simple using BigRoad has made their jobs. And then another great thing about DashLink is its flexibility. You can use it as an AOBRD and then continue to edit your logs until you're ready to switch into ELD mode. And then, of course, there's how much DOT officers love BigRoad. We hear so often from our customers how when a DOT officer sees that they're using BigRoad, they wave them right through their inspections because they know and trust our solution. The next question is, does BigRoad have a personal conveyance allowance? And yes, the BigRoad app does have a personal conveyance option, and this allows drivers to make small moves, like move their truck around the yard, without it kicking into on duty. Next is, will drivers be able to change the start to noon rather than midnight? Well, currently we only offer midnight to midnight cycles, but we've added a note to our developers to add noon to noon in the future. If you email support@bigroad.com, they can offer you a few tricks that will help you in the meantime. The next question is, what is the total cost for each truck or driver with BigRoad? Are there any hidden fees? So for a single operator, single asset, it's just $19.50 a month. There are no installation fees and no maintenance fees, a simple 1-year contract with no hidden fees, but we do require 1-year upfront payment. The next question we have is, can we pay for the hardware and avoid a monthly fee? So we do not sell our DashLink ELD hardware outright, and we don't charge you for the hardware unit itself. You get the device and simply pay a monthly subscription fee. Unlike many vendors who charge hundreds of dollars for the unit up front and charge you a high monthly fee, we have one of, if not the lowest monthly subscription fees on ELDs today. The next question is, how does BigRoad track IFTA mileage? So the mileage report in the BigRoad web app provides raw mileage data for each truck across all jurisdictions it traveled in for the report time period. This makes creating IFTA fuel tax reports so much easier. Next question is, how does BigRoad tie into the ECM of a vehicle? So the DashLink ELD is a plug-and-play device, which means the DashLink hardware plugs into your vehicle's diagnostic port via a cord. It can be installed by a driver within minutes, and there are no permanent changes to your vehicle required. The driver then pairs the DashLink ELD to their Android or iOS phone or tablet and run the BigRoad mobile app through that, and then connect it via Bluetooth to the ELD device. What kind of options do you have for pickup trucks and big trucks? So our DashLink ELD is compatible with all heavy-duty trucks and motor coaches, as well as other vehicles such as pickup trucks, cube vans, and those that were manufactured after 2008. And we can do this by offering different cords and pin configurations. You'll likely need an OBD2 or a JBus cord, and you'll just have to let us know which cord you need. With BigRoad, if you don't send the logs to an email, are they saved electronically? Do you need to print out days or weeks when you're off? If you're using the BigRoad mobile app, you can pull up logs through the app from the last 7 days or 14 days, depending on which country you are driving in. That will allow you to present the required logs during an inspection. If you need to go back further than what's required for an audit, you can log into the BigRoad web app for all of your logs will be saved there automatically. Will BigRoad's DashLink be compliant for 2019? Yes, our DashLink ELD is registered on the FMCSA's list of certified ELDs. So we recommend you purchase your DashLink now and use it as an AOBRD, and then you make the switch to ELD mode when you're ready before that 2019 deadline. Next question that we have is, will BigRoad be considered an e-log? So this depends on which BigRoad solution that you're using. The BigRoad mobile app is an electronic logbook, which helps you manage your hours of service, but on its own, not compliant with the ELD mandate. I really think the confusion here is that many electronic logbooks on their own are referred to as e-logs, but a lot of people also use the term e-log to refer to engine-connected devices. In order to comply with the ELD mandate deadline by December 18, 2017, you will need to have an ELD or AOBRD installed in your vehicle. BigRoad's DashLink is an engine-connected solution that connects to the BigRoad mobile app, and if you have it installed by that December 2017 deadline, then you're going to be compliant with the ELD mandate. And finally, we get a lot of questions about the FMCSA list. But as they're all very similar, I've summarized them into one, and hopefully it gives you the answers that you're looking for. So the FMCSA has a list of certified ELD providers. However, since this is a self-certification process, how can you tell which providers are legitimate, and is BigRoad on the FMCSA's list? So the ELD self-certification list is exactly that, a list where vendors have said that their device is compliant with the FMCSA's guidelines. However, they do provide an optional test that is extensive that vendors can use to ensure their device meets all of the requirements of an acceptable electronic logging device. This test is not mandatory, and it is a self-certification list, so you'll notice that a lot of the providers that registered early might fall under the category of devices that don't really meet the FMCSA's requirements. And I'd be wary of any devices that registered really early, as many of them listed within days of the final spec being made public, which would not have given them enough time to build a fully compliant product. In contrast, BigRoad wanted to take our time to develop a product that would not only comply with the mandate, but be a device that owner-operators, drivers, and fleets actually want to use. Our product team went through extensive development and thorough field and in-house testing to ensure our customers are getting a product that meets the technical and functional specifications outlined in the FMCSA's final rule. Okay, so we've covered a lot of compliance questions, and now it's up to you guys to find a solution that meets your unique needs as an owner-operator. Owner-operators like you have a lot of hats to wear in your day-to-day operations, and you're probably concerned about how this mandate is going to affect your bottom line. You need a solution that's going to make compliance easy for you without breaking the bank. And that's why I want to talk to you briefly about the BigRoad mobile app and DashLink ELD. It's the most affordable, reliable, simple, and flexible ELD solution that's available today. Let's start with the BigRoad mobile app. This is our electronic logbook and hours of service management application. The BigRoad mobile app is completely free for owner-operators and drivers to use and can be downloaded to a smartphone or tablet from the Google Play and iTunes stores. Our DashLink ELD is compatible with all heavy-duty trucks and motor coaches, as well as other vehicles. Back to the mobile app. It takes the guesswork out of logging and enables you to create clean, inspectable, and error-free logs while accurately tracking your hours of service. We're always hearing about how much drivers enjoy this app because it makes their jobs easier. They don't need to worry about wrong calculations, running over their hours, or getting a violation for something that's easily avoidable. And the app is one of the top-rated apps for hours of service. So we're consistently getting 4.5 and 5-star ratings from our users on both platforms. So you can try it for yourself by visiting BigRoad.com and entering your phone number into the bar at the top of the mobile app page. We'll send you a link to download the correct version for your device. And you can also visit Google Play or iTunes and search for BigRoad. Finally, the solution that everyone should get onto if they need a compliance solution is our DashLink. With the electronic logging device mandate deadline getting closer, owner-operators are starting to make the move because they've seen how engine-connected logging can drastically improve their operations. So when you use an ELD or an AOBRD, potential hours of service violations disappear. These devices automatically do many of the things that you, as a driver, can get dinged for during a violation. You're also going to be building up your record of clean inspections and compliance, while other owner-operators are still at risk from using paper logs and even electronic logbooks. Brokers will be more likely to select you if you have a clean record and are placing safety first. And then you'll also see reduced insurance rates, which can save you even more money. The DashLink is really the easiest and most affordable ELD mandate compliance solution that you're going to find on the market today. It has no upfront hardware costs and a low monthly fee, and it'll give you the tools that you need to comply with the ELD mandate without worrying about what it's going to cost you. So there's no expensive installation or permanent changes to your truck required. You simply plug the device into the ECM of your vehicle and connect it via Bluetooth to your mobile device. And as we discussed, you can run the DashLink as an AOBRD until 2019. If before that you want to go fully ELD compliant, then you can do so with a flick of a switch. You control when you want to transition from an AOBRD to an ELD. Okay, so that wraps up our Your Top Compliance Questions Answered webinar. If you have questions that weren't answered during the webinar, please enter them into the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel. And while we're waiting for those to come in, there's a few things that you can take advantage of. If you're interested in learning more about BigRoad solutions, here are some ways that you can. So if you want to download the BigRoad mobile app, the address is on the screen there, bigroad.com/solution/BigRoad-mobile-app. And you can enter your phone number into the box at the top of the page, and we'll text you a link to download the app. If you're interested in learning more about a DashLink, you can visit bigroad.com/dashlink and fill out a demo request form. Okay, so let's jump into some of the questions that we received during the webinar. Okay, so some people are looking for some clarity about log editing. So with an ELD, you can't really change anything that's been automatically recorded. From the web application, there are a few very limited edits that you or an administrator will be able to make, but they'll need to be annotated. For example, you can change your status from off-duty to on-duty, not driving, and a note that explains that you logged your training time incorrectly as off-duty. So the edit and annotation need to be verified from you inside the mobile app. The edit isn't accepted until you confirm it from the mobile app and then resubmit the record of duty status for that day. However, with an AOBRD, you can still edit your vehicle location and you can change an event. So you can adjust your duty status from on to off, or on duty to personal conveyance or yard move, etc. And again, BigRoad's dash link can be used as an AOBRD or an ELD whenever you're ready. Next question is from Mike, who says, I have an E-log app on my phone. Will that be compliant? So although electronic logbooks can make hours of service tracking and compliance easier, it's important to understand that they are not an ELD mandate compliance solution. In section 395.2 of the ELD mandate, the FMCSA states that an ELD must be integrally synchronized with specific operations of the motor vehicle in which it is installed. So this means that it needs to be engine connected, which an electronic logbook is not. Engine connected devices, like ELDs and AOBRDs, connect to an app in order to communicate with and complete the automated logs. But an electronic logbook app alone is not enough to run in compliance after December 18th of this year. Looks like the last question that we have is from Lewis, who asks, do devices need to be hardwired into trucks, or can we utilize other equipment that can be used on multiple trucks through the diagnostics connector? So no, ELDs don't need to be hardwired to trucks. BigRoad's dash link, for an example, is a plug-and-play solution, so it just plugs into the ECM of the vehicle and connects to your phone or tablet via Bluetooth, so it's easily transferable between drivers and trucks. Okay, it looks like that's it for questions. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.